What's up, everybody? How are we doing? We turn my mic down just a smidge. That'd be great. Thanks. Welcome to Mission City. Glad you guys are here. If you haven't met me yet, my name is Russell. I'm the lead pastor, and we are still talking about Sabbath, which you might be like, how on earth could you spend 4 weeks talking about Sabbath? We know it. It's a commandment. We move on. We skip it. We don't want to do it. All right, but no, we're doing it. We're talking about it. We're talking about this week, and we'll wrap it up next week in Sabbath. And also, too, I want to make a comment about the family service. I think sometimes, thank you for the cue. Perfect timing. Thank you. We're nervous about babies making noise in family service. We're nervous about that. It's like we're doing a family service, so there'll be some intentional things for family. If you don't have any kids, there'll also be still preaching, worship, stuff like that, too. It's going to be great. But, it's good to have the whole family all together. And you know what? And sometimes families are loud. You know what I mean? It's fine. It's just what we're going to do. So next week's going to be a fun time just to kind of have everyone all together. And if you're worried about your kid making noise, don't. Because you know what? Everybody makes noise. It's happening. It's just what goes on. So it could be fun. But we are in the 4th week of our series in Sabbath. And we've been looking at Sabbath as this day. We're talking about eventually, we're talking about it as a spiritual practice. And so it's something that you have to practice. It's something that it's a practice is something that you do that positions you into the presence of God, and that when we are in God's presence, we are transformed. And so Sabbath is a way to position yourself to be in the Lord's presence so that you can be transformed into the person that God is calling you to be, the man or woman that God is calling you to be. And so far, I think we talked about this last week a little bit, but Sabbath 101 is just having a regular time that you stop and that you rest. And even that, we don't carve out time in our lives to stop and rest. Now, and I even clarify this too, if you're not doing this at all, to go from 0 to 24-hour full day of not working and just resting, that's a bit impossible probably, or it feels impossible. And so I would encourage you, try an evening, try a morning, try 30 minutes, try an hour, try something, because it's something that you want to grow in. It's a practice that you want to grow in. And as you continue to find see the transformation and the life that it begins to give you, then begin to adding, maybe you do an evening, a meal with your family in an evening, and then maybe you add breakfast the next morning, or you do a Saturday night dinner with friends, and then you go to church on Sunday mornings, and it's done after church on Sunday. I don't know, but just something that you can grow into. But it's a time where we eventually, so we're not just stopping resting. That's 101. 201 is where we're actually figuring out, what do we do on the Sabbath? Is it just like where I meditate for 24 hours? No. Is it I have to read the Bible for 24 hours? No. I have to pray for 24 hours? No. It's actually a day that we talked about last week, which is a day to delight in God and others and people. That's people and others are the same. And in God's creation. And so it's a day to play, to rest, to play, to read, if you recharge by running. Some of you, running is like death to you, but some of you, I know, recharging, running is like everything to you, and it's where you connect with the Lord, and it's the day that you do that. It's the day that you take a nap. It's the day that you connect with your kids and your spouse, and you're present with them. And so we've been talking about stop, rest, delight. And then today we're going to talk about worship, that Sabbath is a day that we do worship Him. Because this practice, what it does is it shifts our lives. It should be a slide here. It shifts our lives. It's a reset for our lives. And it goes from this. If you're feeling restless, it makes your life restful. It's a shift from hurry to having margin. It's a shift from burnout to living at a sustainable pace. It's a shift from noise to quiet, from chaos to gratitude, from anxiety to peace, and to control to trust. Because it's going to take trust. It's going to take that you're believing that God is in control of the world, and that it can still work without you working and doing for a moment. And it's freeing. It's incredibly freeing as well. And so it's one of these shifts. And as I was preparing this week, I was reminded. You ever get reminded of a famous passage that you you didn't ignore, but you kind of stopped thinking about it anytime someone read it, because you're I've heard that 1,000 times. I'm going to read this, and you're I've heard this 1,000 times. I don't need to hear it again. But Psalm 23 is a famous psalm which is the Lord is my shepherd psalm. Anyone hear Psalm 23 before? You guys know this? Maybe you memorized it. Maybe as a child you were forced to memorize it in Sunday school, and now you resent Psalm 23, which you shouldn't because it's very powerful. It's very good. But I love the end of Psalm 23 because it reminds me of this idea of Sabbath, of like when we begin to practice and spend time and connect with the Lord in this way, what it does is there's this overflowing nature of our lives, that the Sabbath day begins to overflow into the rest of our lives, that we begin to trust God more. Like when we're working, we begin to not be so restless, but we still work. We work from a place of rest because we have experienced rest for our souls as well. And so I love this verse at the end of it, verses 5 and 6. He says, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies," which that's a pretty fun imagery, that God like sets you like a little brunch. You know, who doesn't like brunch? You know, you got a little brunch scene, maybe a little brunch buffet in front of your enemies. Like everything's gonna be okay in the midst of your enemies. That's cool. But what I want to look at, and he says, "You anoint my head with oil." I want to look at this. My cup overflows. My cup overflows. That like being with God, experiencing Sabbath is an opportunity for your cup to overflow, that his peace to overflow, the grace in his life to overflow into every aspect of your lives, the way you work, the ways you raise your kids, how you spend your free time. And I love this idea. He says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. Surely it will, because he's my shepherd. And what Sabbath does is it reconnects us to our shepherd in the midst of this busy world. And then it allows us for our cup to overflow into every aspect of our life. And goodness and his mercy will follow me because I'm so connected to him. And it's not this name it and claim it, but it's that we see God's goodness in the gratitude of everything that we have because of what he's given us in this life. And then I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It's this idea that like I'm gonna be in relationship with God, that like he's actually like living with me. He's actually living with me in my life over and over and over again. Now, this idea of dwell, you know, it's like God's your roommate. You got a new roommate. Jesus is your roommate. He's hanging out with you. You're dwelling with him. You know, would you be a good roommate to Jesus? I don't know. I'm a little messy. Jesus might not like that, but who knows? But like, it's this idea. He's with you. He's living with you. You're living under the same roof with him, and in his presence, it transforms us. And so, Sabbath is this beautiful thing. And so, we're going to look at Genesis chapter 2 one last time as well, which you might be tired of hearing this as well. He says, "Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done." And then I want to focus on verse 3. He says, "So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done." And so Sabbath is a day of worship that God calls holy. And God made it holy. He made a day holy, which I find quite fascinating. As I was studying this, someone brought this to my attention as I was reading. They said that in the other contexts, in other cultures, the deities in those cultures, they would create holy spaces, like a place that you could go to visit and to be in that deity's presence. But God made a day. He made a day. It's not a place that you go to. He made a day inside of time that shifts the way it is, that God makes a holy day instead of a holy place so that we as his people in his world can go enjoy him everywhere. It's a shift from a holy space to the space and time that you can have access to his goodness all the time. The Sabbath is our great cathedral to play and to delight in the Lord. Now, this word holy, it's a very church word that we use. We don't talk about holy. Hey, you're very holy today. I want to let you know that. We don't use that word, although Evan used it as we were talking about God earlier today in worship. What does it mean? It means unique. It means set apart. It means special. It actually even means uncommon. And so in a more Christian formal way, or following Jesus formal way, it means set aside for God's special purpose. And so it's this time, it's this day that it's intentionally to be unique. And it's intentionally designed for us to see the goodness in this world, and we relish his goodness. And so you do things that are different on that day. It reminds me, anyone else have a Meemaw? Anyone else have a Meemaw? Just me? I have a Meemaw. Yeah, there you go. There we go. Thank you. Meemaw and Granddad, no shame. Meemaw's still living. She's 91. She will never die. I love her. She will never die. That lady is healthier than all of you, I promise. She gets blood work done regularly because she's 91, and the doctor's like, yep, you're fine. She's great. Anyway, but when I go to my Meemaw and Granddad's house for Sunday dinner after church, because that's what you do in the South, you go to your grandparents' house, and you do this big meal. It's kind of like a Sabbath kind of thing growing up. You know what we ate at Meemaw's house? Not the food. We ate on the nice china because everyone had their nice plates that you ate on. And you got in trouble if you cut your food too hard on it or if you did anything wrong with it. Because it was a special day, family day, Sunday afternoon, eating dinner at Meemaw's house. The whole family's over there. You got to eat on the nice stuff, right? You know what we ate throughout the rest of the week? Paper plates. Why? We don't want to do dishes. That's just what it was, right? Now, I'm not judging you if you eat on china all the time or if you only eat on paper plates. What I'm saying is, in that moment, that's a set-apart occasion for our family to eat on those special things. It was special. It was good. It was fun. It was holy in that way. And so Sabbath is a holy day set apart for us to dedicate to the Lord. And what it does is it's just different. It's different, and honestly, it's uncommon. You know why? Because we don't do it. We don't do it in our culture. It's hard for us to even set aside an evening. So for some of us, it's hard for us to set aside an hour for us to put our phones away, to be present with the people around us as well. Another thing that's cool about Sabbath and worship is it gives us access and it reminds us of the relational connection and communion that we can have with God. And so it is to be a picture of us looking back at creation before the fall. Because Sabbath was pre-fall. It was created pre-fall. Where Adam and Eve were in the garden and they were enjoying the presence of God, like God walked with them in the garden. We have that. It's also a future telling of what will happen in the end. So at the very end, when Jesus comes back and all, at the very end, the followers of Jesus will live with God on the new heaven and the new earth, and we'll get to experience him, and we'll get to live with him and dwell with him, and it's something we can enjoy. There's a rabbi that says this about the Sabbath. He says, unless one learns how to relish the taste of Sabbath while still in this world, unless one is initiated into appreciation of eternal life, one will be unable to enjoy the taste of eternity in the world to come. The essence of the world to come is Sabbath eternal, and the seventh day is time is an example of eternity. Now, I will say this. Now, if you read this quote, it can suggest, like, hey, if I don't understand Sabbath now, then I'm not going to enjoy, like, being with Jesus later. And that might feel a little harsh to you. And I will say there is a little truth to that, because I think what they're getting at is if you can't enjoy a day delighting and worshiping God, if you can't enjoy a day in fellowship and community with other people, if you can't enjoy a day playing and delighting in God's creation, then you might not enjoy the new heaven and the new earth very much. You might not enjoy the end very much. You might not. And so one of the things that we want to do is we need a shift. We need to have this reset button for us so that we can enjoy his kingdom. Because Sabbath is this practice of, God, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as is in heaven. That's what it is. And it's this day of worship. And so when you think of worship, when I say the word worship, what comes to mind? You don't have to shout it out, but I have something very specific that I assume that all of you think. Not all of you, but most of you think. When I say worship, what do you think? I think music. Anyone else think music right away? Like what Evan does. Evan is called our worship leader or worship pastor. He's our worship director, whatever he's called. We don't even have a title. You're something. But you're that guy. But he's the one that does what? He does worship. Right? Now, the rest of this, We don't call it worship. We call it, this is preaching or whatever it says, there's hosting. But when we think about worship, we generally, in our culture, we think about singing. And a simple definition is to give praise and honor. But really, worship is to reorient your life around God. It's a shifting. We talked about this a little bit later, but it's learning how to live life with God as opposed to life for God. Like that I can worship God in any and everything that I do. You worship God when you work. You worship God when you are at home. You worship God when you're hanging out with your family. You use your resources is an act of worship. The things you love can be an act of worship. And so worship is this thing. It's this all-encompassing thing in our lives. 1 Corinthians 10:31, Paul kind of gives us free rein in worship when he talks about this. He says, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. Now, this is a proof text. This is a base text for saying that everything that you and I do is an act of worship, meaning that you and I are worshiping something all the time. That you are a worshiper. We are worship beings. We're worshiping something. And so we have to broaden our understanding of worship, because that's why I think that sometimes when we think about Sabbath and like spending time like doing this or even creating time to do this, like that's lame. I don't have time to do that. But it's like, no, like your life is an act of worship. And so do the things that give you life as well. And so we need to broaden our understanding of worship. It's all the time. It's in everything that we do. Or as my friend Schmidt from New Girl says, what is it? What is it? Anyone? It's all day. All day. Anyway, don't watch New Girl. It's fantastic. I mean, never mind. But that was a mixed signal. I'll let you figure out which one I really think. Everyone worships, though. Everyone. It's not a question of if you do, but what. And I like to use this language too. Like I like to ask this question: what sits on the throne of your heart? That's what you're worshiping. And for us in society, it's very fluid. It's not always one thing. Like we have a desire as followers of Jesus that, yeah, I want Jesus to be the thing that I worship. But we know that's not always true. And we worship other things. There's a guy, his name, this is a longer quote, so listen, it's not on the screen, but it's from David Foster Wallace. He talks about this: in the day-to-day trenches of adult life, which, let's just go ahead and honest, adulting, not always fun, right? Like, you know, that time where you had to start paying your bills and your insurance and, you know, like dealing with stuff? Man, it's overrated. I don't like it. But in the trenches of adult life, there's actually no such thing as atheism, is what he says. So if you're an atheist, I apologize for this, but this is his point. There's no such thing as not worshiping. That's what he's meaning. Like you're worshiping something. It might not be a deity or a spiritual being, but you're worshiping something. And he says everyone worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe someone choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. And he lists the different things in our culture that we worship. And we've been talking about the different gods in our culture that we worship, of accumulation and accomplishment. But if you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough, never feel you have enough. If you worship your own body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age starts showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally plant you. Worship power, you will feel weak and afraid, and you will need ever more power over others to keep that fear at bay. If you worship intellect, being seen as smart, you will end up feeling stupid, a fraud, always on the verge of being found out, and so on. And so we're all worshiping something. This reminds me of the passage last week in Jeremiah where we talked about, let not the wise man boast in his wisdom, or the strong man in his strength, but let him who boasts boast in this, that they understand and know me. I am the Lord. And so it's not if, it's what. And what are you worshiping? What sits on the throne of your heart? I like to imagine it a little bit like this way. Jake and I were doing a sermon review before this, and I couldn't figure out what the name of this game was, because I was like, hey, you know the game where you have multiple people, like say there's 8 people playing the game, and we'll see if you're as smart as I am, or as dumb as I am, really. You have 8 people playing the game, and there's 7 chairs, and they walk around the chairs, and there's music playing, and when they stop the music, they have to get into the chairs. Because I was like, I don't know the name of that game. I play the game. What's the name of that game? Thank you. It's musical chairs. I Googled all of that, and somehow AI could not figure out that I was trying to figure out what musical chairs was. But have you ever played musical chairs before? Yeah, and some of you are probably pretty good at it. You're pretty aggressive, or you're quick, or you're bony because you use those elbows. You know what I mean? Me, a little slow, not bony. Always lost. So, anyway, this is kind of how I imagine this, though. If you think, if there's one chair, there's one throne of your heart, there's one space for one thing to worship at a time, and I imagine that the different things in your life are competing to try to take over that seat. And it's what the guy, David Wallace, said earlier. It could be money. It could be power. It could be maybe you have an addiction that you don't like to share with other people. Maybe it's your intellect that's that. Maybe it's beauty and or self-worth and something like that too. And so so we're all worshiping something. It's all competing. And so Sabbath is this day that allows us to reset who sits on the throne of our lives. It's a reminder. It's a day that does it. In this world competing for influence and to shape you, it's a day to say, no, like this day, specifically this day, because sometimes when we're working, because we're supposed to work hard for the other 6 days, when life goes on, it can be easy to get out, like to get us sorts and misunderstand or let something else take that seat from a moment. From your heart. But Sabbath is a day to reset who sits on the throne of your heart. Now, why does it matter? Why does it matter who or what you worship? Well, it matters because we become like who and what we worship. Like we are becoming and being transformed by the things that you worship. And you can consider that in your own life of the things that you worship. Like it talks about that quote talking earlier, like if you're power hungry and you worship power, then you're going to continue to fight and to claw to have more power. If you worship a substance, then that substance is going to begin to transform and to change you and to shape you because you need to have more of that substance or whatever that addiction else may be. Because we're all becoming something. We're all being transformed into something. And I hope for you that you would be transformed by the renewing of your mind into the person that God has called you to be, into the person, the son or daughter of King Jesus. That's who he's calling you to be. And so Sabbath is, again, a way to take that chair back and let the Lord have that chair to be the king of our heart. It's the way that we come back to Holy Center. And so just very practically speaking about this, so I think we as people need to know how we connect with the Lord, how we commune with the Lord, how we worship the Lord to be able to enjoy our Sabbath. Because if you're like, well, what do I do? Like, I don't even know how I connect with the Lord. I would really encourage you to this resource. It's called Sacred Pathways. It's a book. I don't know who the author of the book is, but I swear if you Google Sacred Pathways, it'll find your answer better than me trying to find musical chairs on Google. But if you need me, I'll find the book for you. But there's these sacred pathways that if you can put the slide up, that if you don't know it, then it actually kind of hurts you in your connecting with the Lord. And so trying to figure out, like, what is your spiritual temperament is vital, I think, in this practice of Sabbath. So I had the pleasure of living in Colorado Springs, Colorado for 2 years. Anyone ever been to Colorado Springs, Colorado? Anyone? You know, what do you notice right away when you're in Colorado Springs? It's very specific. The mountains. And there's specifically one mountain that you notice. It's called Pikes Peak. Yeah, Pikes Peak. It's a 14er among about 9 to 10,000 feet mountains. And you know where I used to sit on my backyard, in my back porch? You know where I could see? I could see Pikes Peak. You know where I used to go ride my bike? I used to go ride my bike from my house through the Garden of the Gods every time I rode my bike. Every time. And avoid you crazy Kansan tourists trying to hit me in the bike lane or parking in the bike lane as I'm going. Anyway, doesn't matter. All right, so, but I moved to Kansas, and I get a little mopey for a little bit. You know why? You don't have Pikes Peak here. It's not out there. I've looked. It's not in my backyard. I go to different places. It's not there. And you know what my problem is I do connect with the Lord as a naturalist. Like, I love the outdoors. I might not love going on a 5-day camping backpacking trip. That might not be my thing. But I love creation. I love sitting in it, and I love enjoying it. And so for me, I have to find space. I have to fight to find spaces here that have that beauty in it. Some of you are sensates. You love God with the senses, which is cool. That's awesome. You love smells. You love taste. You love getting your hands dirty. You just love just getting in there. You know what I mean? Some of you are traditionalists. You love God through ritual and symbol. Hey, Josh, how are you? You're a symbol. You're a traditionalist. Looking at you, buddy. Get an amen. He's nodding already, right? But he loves that stuff. He loves that stuff. Aesthetics, loving God in solitude and simplicity. That's my wife. My wife loves, you know people that don't sleep with a fan and like no noise in the room, you know? I think those are crazy people. I love my wife. She's not crazy. But like the first time we did it, I was like, how do you sleep? What are you doing with all your thoughts? I can hear everything in my house. I can hear the water dripping through the walls right now. What are you doing? Anyway, but she likes not only a quiet home, but she also likes silence and solitude with the Lord. It could be you too. Activists, this might not be something you do on your Sabbath, loving God through confrontation. Like, maybe you do that the other 6 days, and you know the job well done, and you just rest in the Lord. But some of you you're activists. Like, you have this great sense of justice, which is awesome because that's from the character of the Lord. And you don't you want to fight against injustice in the world. And like that's a way of worship. And that's how you harness that as well. Some of you are caregivers, you know, loving God but loving others. And that's awesome. Like that's a way to do it. And on a Sabbath day, you know how you worship in that way? You invite people into your home and you make a meal for them and you enjoy sharing it with them as well. Some of you are enthusiasts, loving God with mystery and celebration. Throw a party. Have a great time. I don't know what the mystery part necessarily means there, but enjoy, like celebrate. Be a person of joy. Contemplatives, loving God through adoration. And then finally, intellectuals. I think of Luke Bergner here, wherever Luke is. There you are, right there. But I talked to Luke. He's like, I read this great book the other day. It just felt like when he's not reading a book, he doesn't feel as connected to the Lord. And I'm like, cool, well, we got to get you another book then, Luke. Come on, we got to do this now. But each of us are different, and there's ways for us to connect with the Lord. And Sabbath is this way where if you're like, I don't know, then you experiment, you try it out. So last week we talked about it's a time to delight with God, others, and in creation. And so like the others part is like share a meal with somebody and enjoy it. Bring them into your home or go out to dinner and celebrate. But then try a spiritual practice that in one of these that you can enjoy that could help you commune with the Lord as well. Like for me, we now, I don't have Pikes Peak, but I have a tree that I look at, okay? It's the best I can do in my backyard. It's the best. I have 2 trees, actually, and at least they're pretty and they're large. And so I have this seat on my deck now that I sit and I stare at the tree, and I do. That's where, like on Friday, we had our Sabbath this week on Friday, and I sat there for an hour and a half just sitting thinking. We had worship music playing in the background, talking to the Lord, praying, and it was great. So good for my soul as well. And you kind of have to find the thing that is good for you as well. Because we need resets, honestly. Like we need a reset. The life is so busy. It's so challenging, and we need reminders. And this is one of these roadblocks and these boundaries in our lives. Sabbath is this roadblock in our boundary in our lives to reset us back to the way that it's supposed to be. And because we want to live a life of overflow. I'm going to invite the band to come back up. But we want to live a life of overflow. We want, like I desire that your cup would runneth over, as it says in the New King James. That it would. That your life, that God's grace and his love and his mercy would overflow in your life. And it would pour out into every aspect of your life so that people would see your life and they would glorify God in heaven as well. And so as we end today, I'm just gonna read Psalm 23 as a way of just reminding you that the Lord is your shepherd, that he's going to be with you. And that when we go through good times and in bad times, that he's with you. He's your shepherd. And that he's leading you to a place where he wants and completely frank, he wants you to lead you to a place where that he is the one that sits on the throne of your heart. He is the one that you find relief and life from. He is the one that you know and that you walk with, and that your life is changed and others are changed because of it as well. And I believe that this practice is a way for us to reset and to take back a little bit of the things that are stealing us joy, stealing joy from our lives. And so before I read this, though, I'm just going to remind you of what we're going to do during response time. So during response, we're going to sing, of course. We're going to worship, because that's all worship is. It's just singing. I'm just kidding. It's not. It's everything. It's all day, okay? Also, if you need prayer, there'll be people that would love to pray with you in the back. I'll be in this back corner over here if you want to pray, if you need prayer. And then we take communion each week. And so we take communion to celebrate the fact that Jesus laid down his life for you so that he could restore you into right relationship with God. That his death on the cross, his body broken, is that cracker that as you chew up, you can just imagine the body broken, and the juice that you drink is this bloodshed was poured out for you so that you could receive forgiveness of sins, so that God could restore you back into his family, and so that you could enjoy this amazing thing, so you can worship him, so that you can be with him forever. And so as you come to the table today, is what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to confess the things that you worship that aren't him. Is on your way is to confess the things that take that number one seat in your heart away from him. And after you take the cup and the cracker, as you walk away, and after you've done that, is I want you to walk away set free from those things. And that living in the forgiveness that he has purchased you as well. Because God has great things for you. He has amazing things for you. And that his goodness and mercy will follow you all the days of your life. And so it's these things, as he creates these ways, like communion is a way to remind us of our forgiveness that we have in him, and the freedom and the sonship and the daughtership that we have in him. And that he's created other things like Sabbath to reset our hearts and our minds to him. And so I would encourage you to practice. And one last thing is there's going to be a Sabbath class that we're going to do. If you're like, hey, I want to figure out how to do this more, you can come talk to us, one of us. Evan, our sweet worship person, he is sweet once you get to know him. I don't know. Anyway, Evan is going to lead that in a few weeks, and so we'll have some more information right there. But there's a sign-up online already if you go to the Church Center app or go to our Planning Center login as well. But we will. That's another way where a group of people are going to kind of walk through a study. It's an hour-long study for 4 weeks, kind of focusing even more so on these different things, and then actually creating a plan for your own life to start practicing these things as well. So, if you wouldn't mind, stand with me. We're going to read this Psalm 23 together. And we can drop the lights down, too, if you don't mind. Sam, you want to drop the lights down, or Jake? If you don't mind, just close your eyes. Just begin to, even now, just begin to confess those things in your own heart and mind that sometimes takes the place of the Lord, that you worship. Maybe unintentionally, maybe intentionally. Begin sharing those things to you. Having a little reset button. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever.